All right, so you leave for like a month and the world starts crashing down. My goodness, we got a lot of cases to get through, but the most important one that we've been following for a while is that Johnny Somali is apparently, well, apparently he has been sentenced. Finally, after Korea dragging it out for how long, he finally got a sentence. Which, is, yeah, I guess you could say the world's healing, but, it was bound to happen at some point. So, there's a lot of details actually in this case. So, if you want to catch up on the Johnny Somali saga, you can check out the playlist in the description below. Because I'm not going to reiterate everything. I'm just going to go through the most of the sentencing and we'll talk about it. And I'll give you guys a brief, my opinion at the end of it because it's actually kind of important. But, well, not my opinion, but it's actually just interesting. But anyways, so yeah, so Johnny Somali, he's gotten 6 months in prison as of Wednesday of last week. And so we'll just read this article quick here. It says controversial American YouTuber Johnny Somali was sentenced to 6 months in prison on Wednesday by South Korea court upon being found guilty of a string of offenses including public nuisance and distributing artificial intelligence generated sexual content. So in case this one's actually really important because first of all, Korea actually literally updated their laws not that long ago about this kind of stuff because there was actually what you call it, deep fakes were a really big problem. So stuff like that is really, really big in Korea. So they actually did that. And so Johnny Somali, he was dumb enough to have made a deep fake of IRL streamer named Bong Bong and of them doing stuff in this, like having dates and all that stuff, and even swapping some saliva, and kind of crazy they did it live, almost all that. So that's something that's really important. So that's also a big point of contention of why people are a little bit not very happy with the verdict, but we'll get into that later. Anyway, so the Seoul Western District Court said the 25-year-old indicted in November 2024 created repeated disturbances in public, including playing North Korean music and its national anthem loudly and spilling cup noodles at a convenience store in Seoul. The trial, initially scheduled for March 25th, was delayed as prosecutors added charges that he distributed a deepfake sexual video featuring himself and a local female YouTuber. The defendant repeatedly committed crimes against unspecified members of the public to generate profit via YouTube and distributed the content in disregard of Korean law, the court said, adding that the evidence of all charges, it cited the absence of severe harm to victims as a factor in sentencing. So, from my understanding, from what I've been catching up on this case, when it comes down to Korean law, especially if the victim's like really affected, that manages your sentencing compared to like some other countries where it's just like, listen, you did it, but apparently, the judge took into account how the victims felt. And so, well, as you can see here, prosecutors had sought a 3-year prison term. The courts also ordered 20 days of detention. The defendant was taken into custody immediately after sentencing. He was additionally barred for 5 years from working at institutions serving minors and people with disabilities following his release. So basically, that just means he has to register as an SO in Korea. So that's not looking very nice for him. And so keep going here, and it says, speaking to reporters before the hearing, Somali said he was remorseful and wanted to apologize to the people of Korea. Somali, whose real name is Ramzi Khalid Ismail, is a self-described neutral who gained notoriety in Korea for his provocative online content. He posted videos of himself kissing and making sexual suggestive gestures towards a comfort woman. Euphemistic label for women forced into sex slavery by Japan during World War II, and was also seen making sexually abusive and racist remarks towards civilians. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at now in terms of that case. So it's kind of a lot to take in. And so I'll just briefly mention to you guys, I'm sure you've heard it. Those who have been following, you probably know this, but just those who are, have a life. Essentially in Korea, from my understanding, you spend some days in detention. And so that's in case people want to make an appeal, or Johnny will make an appeal, or prosecutors might make an appeal, or Johnny wants to make an appeal. And so that's where you start from the detention center, and then you go all the way into your actual prison. And mind you that the prison he's supposed to be going to was supposed to be for labor. And so he'd be working in a factory, I believe. But unfortunately, something about this case that's really crazy is that it updates literally every 2 days-ish, every time I see something new. So there's actually been a bit of an update. So I want to show you, first of all, that's actually, so the victim, Bong Bong, so what her prosecution, her lawyers were actually they called for an appeal. And so, because of how Bong Bong, was like, she seemed on the surface when it came down to the deep fake, she didn't look like, if she didn't look bothered, that's why the sentence was much lighter. However, if you actually want to see something from their legal counsel, or from her legal counsel anyway, you can see here, Nova Law Firm as a legal counsel for the victim in the Johnny Somali deepfake digital sex crime case issues the following statement. On April 15th, 2026, the Seoul Western District Court found the defendant, Johnny Somali, guilty on all counts, including obstruction of business and violation of the Act on Special Cases Concerning the Punishment of Sexual Violence Crimes. The court sentenced him to 6 months imprisonment and ordered his immediate detention in the courtroom. The defendant's immediate custody is a meaningful outcome. The court made it clear that he had committed repeated offenses against an unspecified number of victims for the purpose of generating YouTube revenue, and shown disregard for the Korean legal order. So something I didn't mention as well is that he actually disrespected the judge and the Korean system so many times. He would call it a joke. He would say all of that. And so now actually the joke is him, but that's something that will also be mentioned. That's what they're referencing to in case you guys were a little confused. Yeah, so here, keep on going. However, while the court found the defendant guilty of distributing false images under the Sexual Violence Punishment Act, we find it regrettable that, in the sentence phrasing, the court reasoned that the victim does not appear to have suffered severe sexual humiliation. The fact that the victim responded with composure must not be interpreted as evidence that no sexual humiliation occurred. Such reasoning risks sending a harmful message to deepfake victims, that they must visibly perform their suffering in order to have their harm recognized. We believe this reasoning is not unrelated to the fact that the sentence imposed fell well short of the 3 years sought by the prosecution. And so, okay, I do have to mention this as well. When it comes down to South Korea, God, which law was it? Ugh, my brain's not remembering. But basically, depending on how many charges you have, that's how, like, depending on how much is there, they stack up. Because he also has deepfake charges against somebody else, not just Bong Bong. So if you have, because he got found guilty for all of them, if you have the first one and the second one, that I believe that's the one that adds up to the 3 years. Anyways, sorry, my memory is not the best on this case. Not the case, but on the law, because it's very specific when I read it up, but I'm sure I'll put it on screen for you guys if I can find it. And so we'll just keep going here, and it says here, we hope this ruling serves as an occasion to heighten public awareness of personal rights violations committed through online platforms and of deepfake-based sexual offenses. And so they are the Nova Law Firm. And from what I hear, they're pretty reputable. So that is the prosecution, I guess, in this case, is the one who's calling for the appeal, at least while Bong Bong's lawyers are calling for it. So the prosecution has more to work with. Now, there's one more batch of news that I want to mention, and that is also that apparently, well, according to Mr. Legal Mindset, who has been following this case very thoroughly, Ramzi Khalid Ismail officially submitted an appeal in South Korea. This move by Somali actually dooms him to a far worse fate in a detention center and keeps him in custody even longer. We'll explain in detail in my next video. And so I'm actually going to explain that right about now. And here's just the document in case, in case you want to see it. Not much we can do with it, but, it's there on the screen for you if you can find it. Well, if you want to look at it. So exactly what does it mean that he actually made his life worse? Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I'll make that very clear, but from what multiple sources I've been reading and been listening to, this is basically how it goes in Korea, from my understanding. So when you are in detention, as I said earlier, you're basically in a transition period. So he's supposed to go from 20 days in detention center all the way into his prison sentence. And all he has to do is serve 6 months and then he's out. However, in the event somebody makes an appeal, you have to stay in the custody for longer. And because now that he's in a detention center, he's going to have to wait. He may have to wait his whole 6 months because appeals in Korea sometimes take forever. Because remind you, when he was in Korea beforehand, it actually turned out that he was like, they were dragging it because he basically was running out of money. He was running out of things to do, and he was getting really desperate. And so they basically made him do all of that. And so because it takes him even longer to get his appeal going, he might have to serve his whole 6 months. So he'll have to serve his 6 months, okay, while he's in the detention center. And then up to how long the appeals take, which could take up to another 6 months, he'll be in there for roughly a year. That's if I believe that's as far as this will go, and then he has to get resentenced again. So essentially, he doomed himself because the play would have had to been to just do the 6 months and then get the hell out of Korea because I'm pretty sure he's banned from Korea after that. So that's where it is right now. And so, from what I understand, okay, this is allegedly, so I don't know if it's 100% confirmed, but apparently he's in the the Seoul Nanbu Detention Center. And unfortunately, there's not a lot about that place. However, I took a brief look, and from what I understand, um, this is one of the more rough places because for him, he has to deal with like actual gangsters and actual people who might rough him up a little bit. And so that's where he's at now. So if I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. Unfortunately, with maps, it's a little bit hard to pinpoint exactly what it looks like. So I did attempt to do other things with it. Like I tried to zoom out, move the little guy over, but I just looked at the entrance and it looks like your standard detention center. But what if I told you that South Korea is a bit infamous for prisons in the sense that it's not looking good for him. So I just want to take a brief look into something real quick, and it's actually like important to this video because his life in prison is not looking very good. Like it's really not looking great. So let's take a look. Essentially, a big issue in Korea right now is that prisons are massively overpopulated. And I actually looked across multiple articles, so I'll give you some stuff what I found here. So, for example, here, this one says, in the era of population decline, South Korea's most crowded place is its prisons. The total capacity of 54 correctional facilities nationwide, including prisons and detention centers, is 50,614 people. Yet approximately 63,500 individuals are currently incarcerated. In December last year, the occupancy rate reached 130%, the highest in 2 decades. So basically, Korean prisons are basically just a bunch of canned sardines in a single spot. Kind of insane. And so even here, he keeps going. It says, the severity of the situation prompted President Lee Jae-myung to expand parole more actively, and the Ministry of Justice decided to parole about 1,300 individuals monthly this year, a 30% increase from previous years. And so because of how crowded these prisons are, some adjustments had to be made. And so that's like one really brief aspect of it to it as well. And I also want to point out is something else that I want to tell you guys about is that another article I have here says that so basically reporters will go into like the prison and try like prison life for like a day. And so it says here the cell assigned to 17 people, including the reporter, measured 18 square meters. Its official capacity is 9 inmates, but typically 15 to 17 people live there. According to prison officials, box tape was haphazardly struck across the wallpaper, and the torn space clearly bore traces of its long years. So it's bad. Like it's actually bad for him. And just to really like hammer home how even worse it gets, he's also a foreigner, okay? And he's gonna be stuck with like Koreans and other people. And because he doesn't speak the language, it gets worse for him because imagine he's trying to get hey, I want some water. Guess what? Unless he knows how to ask it in Korean, he can't do anything about it. And this is why you don't get arrested in places that's not your home country because prison's already rough, okay? Prison where you can't speak a word of the language when you're there is even worse. But anyways, briefly, I do want to take a peek at like a video that actually just came out. I believe it came out yesterday about prison life in South Korea detention center. So let's take a quick look at it because that'll really help us even more understand how cooked he is.
Faded walls and ceiling. Rusty bars are blocking the window to prevent escapes. This is Anyang Correctional Institution that was built in 1963. It's the oldest and also the most crowded prison in South Korea. In this room of about 26 square meters with capacity of 9 people, around 17 inmates live together. There's only one toilet and one faucet in the cell. Now, even if each person is given just 5 minutes to wash up, it still takes more than an hour for everyone to finish. As of April 2026, the total capacity of 55 correctional facilities in Korea is around 50,000. However, the total inmate population exceeds 63,000.
All right, so this kind of goes to point out, like, it's really bad. I guess it's genuinely bad. And also, from what I've been hearing as well, if he is, because he's basically the lowest on the pecking order, he has to clean that toilet. So if he's in a room of, say, like 10 people, he's got to clean the poop of 10 people on one toilet in one bathroom. Woo! Yikes. That is pretty bad. But yeah, apparently the Nanbu detention center is one of the worst ones. So I mean, that was a different one I showed you guys, but the idea still more or less carries on between the two places. So, unfortunately for Mr. Ismail, he's gonna be stuck there for from what I read about. So he has to do 6 months, but he also might be in there up to a year. So, yeah, and that's if he's found innocent, he gets out in a year. But if he's found guilty on the new charges after the new trial, after he gets dragged out again, it's basically it's even worse for him. So, naturally, we don't really feel bad for these kind of people because you go to another country and you found out. So, about the sentencing, I do want to mention this real quick, and then we'll probably close out the video from here. Sentencing's a bit weird to me because essentially the proof was literally right there because like Johnny literally documented every single thing that he did without like beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay, not a lawyer, but I can clearly see he clearly did it. Did he kiss the statues? Yes, but that actually I don't believe that. No, that one he doesn't get charged for that one. Sorry. Did he clearly disrupt business? Yes, he was tossing noodles at people. Did he did he deepfake somebody into an AI video? Yes, he did. We clearly saw it. He showed it off himself. And so that's what I'm understanding. So the victim being, should not like being like, dramatic and stuff doesn't make sense to me. But, it's better than getting no sentence because, I mean, if you remember him in Japan, he was there for a bit, but Japan's like, okay, we kind of don't want him new, we're kicking him out. Same thing happened with like Vitaly. Vitaly was in the Philippines for quite a bit, and the Philippines said, we don't want you in here anymore, and they kicked him out too. And that goes for any other place. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at now. The thing about this case is that at least for now, hopefully there's not any more updates because my goodness, this case gets updated like crazy. And yeah, so man, so this lesson learned. Okay, I cannot leave for too long and then stuff just goes down. But I knew about this case like a long time coming. So yeah, if you want to catch up on other stuff on him related to him, yeah, link will be in the description below to like a whole playlist about him because there's a lot. Like he's been menacing for a while, and so punishment is punishment. All I can hope for is that he gets longer because people like this, like if you give him 6 months, like that's a slap on the wrist. Okay, that's not gonna do much. But if you punish them for longer, there's a better chance they can learn. So, or you could be like Vital, be stuck in a lawsuit. So yeah, that's basically it for me today, guys. I just really wanted to talk about this case because it's been bothering me, not bothering, but it's been there for a while, and I said I was going to cover it to the end, and here we are. So anything else about him is basically going to be a DLC. I don't really care anymore because, yeah, it's not looking good for him, and Korea's probably going to drag him out in that detention center even more. So he's going to be crammed, cleaning toilets, and basically be at the bottom of the pecking order. Crazy stuff. And who knows, he might be a prison wife. But I don't know if Korean prisons are like that. I know other prisons may be, but this one, who knows. Anyways, yeah, so I'm officially back for now. So, stay tuned for future videos because I have more stuff planned. But if you like this video, make sure to comment, subscribe, and follow my socials down in the description below. But that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. See ya!